So, welcome to this presentation of our Agni link, CAD, PDM, PLM to Acumatica integration system. I'm Ricardo. I'm what we call the science officer here, which is just another name for the product owner in agile lingo. And I'm with my colleagues, Eric, who's going to do the fun part of the demo. I'm responsible for the dull part, the PowerPoint part, and Ronan, our business analyst. Our presentation today has a theme, basically, and that's why is it a good idea to integrate CAD, PDM, or PLM and ERP data? And the answer to that question is that because the manual transcription of data from a design application into an ERP application or a manufacturing management application can consume up to 20% of the total engineering effort in an engineer-to-order type of production mode, and that's where we shine, essentially, successfully automating the process of transferring design data into a manufacturing management system, such as, for example, Acumatica. So let me tell you briefly about us. We, as you can probably here, we come from the French-speaking part of Canada, and we're headquartered in Quebec City, but we have people in different locations, such as Montreal, Saguenay, and so on. And we come from the engineering world. So since 1983, starting with AutoCAD 2.6C, we've been working with engineers and designers to help them build product. And eventually, in the early 2000s, actually, it's going to be 17 years these days that we have begun developing applications that would help our customers leverage their investment in metadata. What we call metadata is basically CAD data, design data that does not have as such a geometric representation. So eventually we came up with a quite powerful solution that allows the interactive exchange of information between the engineering department and the manufacturing department. And that's what we're going to demonstrate today. We have customers all around the world. We do everything remotely, with the result that the pandemic didn't hurt us in any way, because we were already working remotely with our customers, and of course, we've been writing software forever. So essentially, what we have done is we have developed a collection of applications that are essentially add-ins to the engineering application, and that sit on top usually of the engineering application, and that allow the establishment of a bidirectional real-time link between the engineering application and the manufacturing application. So the way it works essentially is that we have created a data object. We call it the Smart Bridge Engine, which is essentially a merge of the CAD, PDM, or PLM data. To simplify the discourse, we'll talk about CAD data from now on. And the ERP system. So the way it works essentially is the Smart Bridge Engine creates a set of 3 buckets of data that allow the merging of CAD and ERP data in one single data object. And it is fully bidirectional so that you can exchange data, any mapping established between the CAD and the ERP application bidirectionally. So anytime the integration process is triggered, and by the way, in the case of SolidWorks, for example, we have connectors for both SolidWorks 3D CAD, the CAD application, and also SolidWorks PDM Professional. And the integration may be triggered in different ways. Like in the case of the CAD application, anytime you save a part or an assembly, that will trigger the integration process. However, in the case of PDM, then any workflow in PDM or document state in PDM can trigger the integration process, and the end user can select which of these workflows will trigger the integration process. So that allows you to define the point where the integration or synchronization of data, of CAD and ERP data will take place, depending on, for example, on the end user's role. A product manager will want to trigger the integration process only when a new revision is created, for example, and is ready to be released into manufacturing. Whereas a designer might want to use the check-in of a document in PDM as a trigger to launch the integration process. So it's very flexible in that respect. So anytime the integration process is triggered, the first thing Agni will do will be to get the data from CAD and bring it into bucket number 1, essentially. And then it will try and get the matching data from Acumatica and bring that into bucket number 3. The next thing it will do, and by the way, if the data exists, it will be brought down into bucket number 3. If it does not exist, it's not a problem because we're going to create it automatically at the end of the process so as to finally merge both bills of materials from CAD and from ERP together. And once the data is into bucket number 1 and 3, then Agni will proceed to automatically resolve discrepancies if any are found between the CAD and the ERP data. And the reason why we automated that process is that we understand that designers are the key contributors to the integration, but they may not be the key beneficiaries. So we want to make sure that those people will be happier rather than more miserable using the solution, and will not have, for example, to ask stupid questions, to answer stupid questions such as, oh, which description should prevail? Should it be CAD or ERP? The answer to that question is pretty much always the same anyway. So what we have done is we allow the customer to define rules of prevalence that will determine on a mapping by mapping basis which data will be kept if there's a discrepancy that is found. And Agni will clearly indicate those discrepancies in the integration dashboard that you see in the middle of the screen here, so that all the end user has to do is to review quickly those yellow spots in the dashboard. And if the end user is not happy with the resolution that Agni has made, all he or she has to do is to right-click and revert the decision, and that's the end of it. So that makes for a much faster resolution of discrepancies. So once we have resolved discrepancies, the resulting data is brought into bucket number 2 here, and this is what is going to be exposed to the end user in the form of the integration dashboard that you see here. So we use color coding to interactively allow the end user to know what's going on with integration. So for example, a red cell will indicate that data is either missing or invalid. A green cell will indicate that this BOM item does not exist yet in Acumatica and will be created automatically at the end of the integration process. Well, there's a lot of color coding involved, and Eric will discuss that more in detail during the demo. So once the data has been brought into bucket number 2, the end user can interactively monitor the integration process and fix whatever is wrong with the some values, for example. So populate values, validate them using what we call lookups that Eric will show us later on as well. And we have included very powerful data transformation facilities. There are different levels. You have, for example, you can actually build an entire integration without any programming whatsoever, using what we call expressions that are similar to Excel formulas and that are used to do transformation of data during the integration process. So for example, we could extract mass properties from the CAD documents and use that to calculate weights, shipping weight, net weight, gross weight, or whatever, and send that to the Acumatica application. By the same token, you can, for example, use that to concatenate strings to form the fully qualified path name to the PDF document that can be attached to the Acumatica records as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in that respect. And what's really great about that is that actually the entire process is driven by what we call the Agni integration file that you see in the bottom of the screen here, which is basically a database that describes not only the basic mappings, how data correspondence will be established between the CAD data and the ERP data, but also the behavior that those mappings will adopt throughout the integration process. So for example, you can define a field as read-only in the dashboard. You can also use that to determine which side either ERP, CAD, or both, will be updated at the end of the process. So for example, you might want to expose costing information, vendor information, or even availability information from Acumatica in the dashboard without necessarily updating it in the CAD document, because that's usually information that ages very quickly. So again, you have a lot of flexibility. There's an unlimited number of mappings that you can have there. And what's great about it is that customers have full control over the integration file using the Agni integration builder, which is essentially a tool that can be used not only to define mappings, but also to define the behaviors of those mappings. And Eric will show that to us at the end of the presentation today. Any questions so far? Let's cover the benefits briefly. Usually customers know those benefits just as well as we do, but let's recap on them briefly. The obvious one, of course, is the elimination or reduction of manual BOM transcription. And based on strictly on that benefit, typically the return on investment for most of our customers is anywhere between 3 and 6 months. What's interesting, though, is that actually the bulk of the return on investment doesn't even come from there, but rather from the benefits that result from increased BOM accuracy that result from CAD to ERP integration. And that usually translates into dramatic reduction of costs in terms of raw material scrap and also rework on the factory floor. Unfortunately, that's not something we can calculate beforehand, but we all know what a 4x8 sheet of stainless steel surgical grade costs, right? We wanted to make sure that the customers, both the customers and the end users, have full control over the process. So using the integration dashboard, end users have full control over the process. However, we have a distinct license that allows the use of Agni in a black box kind of operation, in which case it will run continuously on a console, for example. So it is also possible to have batch mode operation. But I would say that the vast majority of our customers prefer to use the interactive mode to have control over the integration process. And also, as I just mentioned, customers have full control over the integration process by being able to define their own integrations and change those integrations as their requirements or the needs change over time. And also, they can define multiple integrations and allow end users to switch instantly from one type of integration to another, for example. It's important to know also that all of our implementations are done for a fixed fee. So we have a program called the Jumpstart program that covers all of the implementation support services, including the consulting on the best practices in terms of CAD to ERP integration, as well as the implementation of a test environment at the customer's location remotely, also end user training, administrator training, and of course technical support throughout the implementation process. And we also have another fixed fee program called the Custom Integration Program that allows customers to order from us the most complex integration they may need, and they can use that as a starting point because this comes with a license to the integration builder, so they can use that integration as a starting point to create integrations of their own. So that allows them to enjoy the combined benefits of a turnkey implementation as well as a highly customizable solution as time goes by. Normally, an implementation should take no longer than 30 days. Our implementation process is very linear, very straightforward, no rocket science, and it's meant to be as efficient and straightforward as possible. I think it's important to mention that this architecture is quite flexible and allows us, although 95% of the time what we're asked for is about bills of materials and occasionally routings. However, it is possible to map data from CAD to ERP for any kind of data objects, as long as it is possible to map data along a one-to-one relationship between the CAD BOM objects and the ERP BOM objects. So long story short, we believe we have the best possible offering because we come from the engineering side, and this is essentially an engineering application that is meant to be used by engineers. It is fully customer customizable, and it is delivered as a turnkey system, and implementations are done for a fixed fee, so there's no surprises. What it costs at the end is exactly what it was supposed to cost originally. Any questions on this? Okay, so let's move to the fun part with Eric.
All right. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Okay, so at this point, you should see my screen in SolidWorks. So the next part will be the actual demo of AgniLink. And first, I would like to talk about my demo environment. So you can see here that I have this pillow block open in SolidWorks. All components as the prefix PB for the part numbers. And we will synchronize this pillow block with all the components. We will create the items and the bombs in Acumatica. So here I will switch to my Acumatica environment. At this point in the inventory item, you can see if I search for any PB component, there is nothing found in Acumatica at this point. And it's the same thing if we look into the bill of materials. If I search for PB, you can see that we don't actually have any bill of materials for our pillow block. So we will create the items and also the bombs. Oh, I have another tab. I will go back to my items. So we will create, as I said, all the items and the bombs for this pillow block. So back in my SolidWorks environment, as Ricardo said during his introduction, AgniLink has been installed as an add-in in SolidWorks. So you can see here that the AgniLink toolbar with all the options and tools to run AgniLink. You have access to all these options. In fact, the most important options, you have a little AgniLink icon just beside the clock. So you have the most important options. And of course, you can access all those options and tools if you go to the Windows menu. So in the AgniLink toolbar, you have a couple of options, very simple options. So first, you can activate and deactivate AgniLink. So maybe at the beginning of your assembly, when you start sketching your first parts, you may want to deactivate AgniLink. And when you are ready to start synchronizing your metadata, you may want to reactivate AgniLink. So it's just a toggle. We have a button to launch the integration process, save and synchronize. I will show you in a minute. We have also access to the options. So if I open this form, you can see that there are very simple options. At the top, this is where we set up the integration file. Once this is set up, we automatically fill the other fields just below here. So since Acumatica use web services, you can see the URL to connect to our Acumatica system. Just below, you have the security section. Acumatica use the OAuth protocol, so we need to select the OAuth protocol, and we also set up the OAuth client app ID and client app secret right there. And of course, we also add the username and password for the user, which will use AgniLink to synchronize. And at the bottom, we have a couple of CAD options, but the most important option is really here that AgniLink can read and write the custom properties at many places. So first, it can read and write the properties in the active document. or the active configuration. We can read and write the properties in the active document, otherwise the active configuration, or vice versa. So it can be really it can be really useful to maximize the reusability of your legacy data, and I will show you another ways another way to maximize those datas. So it's pretty much it. It's very simple options. We also have access to the properties of this open file, but normally in SolidWorks, the end user will use the normal properties table here. But I will show you in the integration dashboard where this option is more useful. You can you have a button to choose the integration. So depending on your different user roles, you may want to use one, two, or three different integrations, and you can switch quickly between your integrations by using this option. And here, the last tool is the integration builder. It's the administrator tool to build new mappings or edit existing mappings in your integration. I will show you this tool at the end of this demo. So at this point, I am ready to launch the integration process for my pillow block for the entire assembly. So I just need to click on Save and Synchronize. So during this process, AgniLink will gather all the metadata from the CAD system and bring it in bucket number 1. We'll gather all the metadata from the ERP and bring it in bucket number 3, and we'll automatically resolve all discrepancies and show the result to the end user in the form of the integration dashboard. And all of those discrepancies are managed using the Smart Bridge engine, which is in fact the bucket number 2. So the integration dashboard is really the main tool for the end user. Each line here is an item. You can see the main assembly, the sub-assembly, and all the components just below. Each column is a section in the ERP, so you can see the item section. You have other sections, and the bill of material. Just below, you have the property name itself or the mapping name itself. So first, you can see the part number mapping here, the description, and the item type, unit of measure, and etc. So for this demo, I am using an out-of-the-box integration, which contains only the main mappings, I will say the mandatory mappings that you need when you create a new item in Acumatica. So by having all those mappings, you are sure that you won't have any errors with these minimal mappings. The first thing I would like to discuss about the integration dashboard is that recently we have introduced a new feature which with artificial intelligence that will automatically translate or correct your certain mapping, certain fields. In this case, it's configured for the descriptions. So you can see I have a couple of examples. So here you have the column for my original description. And here I have a column for the description that has been corrected or translated, I would say. So first here, you can see that my original description in the CAD has an error here. Yes, a typo error where the G and the N, and you can see that AgniLink, in fact, the artificial intelligence has automatically corrected this typo error. Here you can see that it's corrected. Here, lock washer, I have removed the O So you can see that Agni has automatically corrected this description. Another example here, I have entered a French description, arbre d'entraînement, and the translated description is drive shaft. So it's really automatic and it's configurable. And another example, for example, socket head cap screw. I have removed the C, and then Agni has just added the C to correct the description. So it's a very powerful feature that we have recently introduced in Agni.
By the way, if you allow me, Eric,
Yes.
this is really a world premiere. This is the first time we showed that to anyone outside of our organization, and those are this is only the beginning of our use of artificial intelligence. We have other features in the work, such as, for example, you can see the orange spot here that indicates that a description has been truncated automatically to accommodate the maximum field length in the ERP system. And so another feature we're working on will allow us to use artificial intelligence to intelligently shrink the description by, for example, automatically abbreviating some of the words using well-known conventions to shorten the description so as not to lose any information in the through truncation. We're also working on the pattern recognition, language recognition. It's all based on a machine learning engine that has actually millions of users, and that the heuristics, the learning capability, is based not only on the individual user's experience, but actually on the experience of a very large number of users, and that's where this shines compared to classic spelling checkers, for example, because it can learn from millions of users and make that knowledge available for those features. So we're really proud to be able to show this today for the first time. Back to you, Eric.
All right, thank you very much, Ricardo. Okay, the next thing I would like to talk about is the integration dashboard use color coding to indicate to the end user what's going on in the dashboard. So I have manually removed my description, so to add the red cells. First, we will talk about the green cells. So these green cells here means that all of these items don't exist yet in the ERP system. And in the dashboard, the end user can always mouse over on any cells to have some information. So if you mouse over on PB1 200, it says that this item will be added to the ERP. And in fact, it's the same message for all the items in this BOM. We also have the yellow cells. So if I mouse over on the warning, so the yellow cells are warnings or message. In this case, it's just a message. It says that a BOM will be created for this item since it's the main assembly. And we have the same message here for the sub-assembly. So the yellow cells are just message or warnings that won't stop the integration process. You can launch the integration if you have warnings. But we also have the red cells, and those red cells will stop the integration process. So until you have red cells, you have errors, you won't be able to launch the integration process because the ERP system won't accept all of these empty cells here. So again, if you mouse over, it says that this field is required and is currently null or empty. And it's the same thing here. So Here, the end user can manually enter his description or copy and paste from another cell. So it's important to know that here the Agni link can be used for by the end user to complete his BOM. So it's possible that when he built his assembly and sub-assemblies and parts, that he missed some properties. For example, he may have forgotten to enter his unit of measure. So you can use the integration builder, the integration dashboard here. Can use Agni to complete your BOM. So in this case, I would enter my description here, and this will automatically fill the corrected and translated description. So as soon as you have corrected your errors or your red cells, at this point, you don't have any errors and you should be able to launch the integration process. We also have the orange cells. So Ricardo talked a little bit earlier about these cells here. So it's really a truncation. So we have, since Acumatica use 50 characters for the description field, so to make sure you don't have any errors during the synchronization process, AgniLink has automatically truncated the value to be accepted by the ERP, but AgniLink will always keep the old long description. So you can always right-click and bring back the old long description. We also have some tan cells. It means that we have a discrepancy between the CAD and the ERP. It's very normal. But the most important colors, I will say, is the green, yellow, red, orange, and also I would say the white cells, because as soon as we have synchronized everything, I will show you in a minute, everything is going to be white. So it's the end result that we want normally. So if I go a little bit on the right side, you can see all the out-of-the-box mappings. And at the end, you can see that we also have the support for the attachments. In this case, it's configured to attach PDF, but normally we can attach any type of documents. And it's currently configured to point on one of our network shared folder. So as soon as AgniLink can find a file in this, for example, in this case, if AgniLink can find a file named pb1-200.pdf in this folder, AgniLink will automatically try to attach the document or simply create a clickable link in a custom field that you have created in Acumatica. So it really depends on your ERP configuration, or if, of course, if the ERP support the attachments. A very important feature for the end user in the integration dashboards is the lookups. The lookups are these little button here with 3 dots. And the lookups, in fact, will look at all the possible values that comes from the ERP system. So you can see here, if I look at if I click on the lookup for the part numbers, you can see that AgniLink has gathered all the the items that currently exist in our Acumatica system. You have the same thing, for example, for the unit of measure, for example. So you can see here, this list represents all the unit of measures that we have configured at this point in our Acumatica. And of course, when you want to use lookups, you can search for any value. and the Agni link will give you better search result, and of course here you can use wildcards again to simplify your search results, and you can also search for the code or the description. So by using lookups, the end user is 100% sure that the value that he will select has already been validated by AgniLink, and this way you won't have any errors when synchronizing because the value comes directly from the ERP system. Another tool that we have, I have talked about this tool in the toolbar, but you can see the little I. So the little I, this button here, will access the properties for each of these items here. So if I click on this button for PB1 225 here, I will have the properties for this specific item. So I have the properties of this file and also the internal properties for the physical file on the disk. So it can be useful here instead of closing the dashboard, going in SolidWorks to look at the properties. It could be really much more useful to use this little button. So at this point, I am ready to launch the integration process. So Chuck, do you have any questions?
No, sir, I don't. This is great. All
right. So at this point, the end user just need to click on Save and Synchronize, and synchronize. So at this point, all the items were green, meaning that they don't exist. So AgniLink will create all the items, the bombs in Acumatica. In a case where all the items were white, meaning that they exist in both sides, AgniLink will simply update all the changes that has been made in the bomb in both sides. So you can see here that we have a save operation successful in the Windows notification area. So if I switch to my Acumatica now, we will first take a look at the bomb. So if I search for a PB, you can see that AgniLink has created the bomb for our PB1 200 and PB2 210. So if I open this pillow block, you can see that the bomb has been created with the out-of-the-box mappings, all the properties that is configured in this out-of-the-box integration. If I switch to the items now, I can search for PB again, and you can see that AgniLink has created all the inventory items for our pillow block, for our PB. And if I open the PB1 200, our pillow block, again, AgniLink has created all the out-of-the-box properties, the description here, unit of measures, item class, and etc. So we will change the description here together, and we will simulate the change that comes from the ERP system. So if I change my description, I will save and close. So we can see that now we have for our PB1 200, we now have a new description, pillow block production, that comes from the ERP system. So if I switch back to my SolidWorks environment, so the next time the end user will launch the integration process, again, AgniLink gather all the metadata from both sides and will automatically resolve all discrepancies using the Smart Bridge engine, and will, in this case, will find a discrepancy in the description field. So again, if you mouse over on this warning here, It says that Agni found a discrepancy between the CAD and the ERP system. In the CAD system, the description is currently pillow block, and in the ERP, it's now pillow block production. And you can see the result after the synchronization will be pillow block production in both sides. So the reason why the result will be pillow block production is because we have determined in the integration builder, in fact, in our integration using the integration builder, we have determined that the description mapping is the prevailing side is the ERP system. So in this case, the ERP will win and the result will be pillow block production. But of course, and as you know, the end user always have full control. So in this case, the sorry, in this case, the end user could manually enter a new description, change the description, or simply right-click and use the actual CAD value, which is pillow block. But of course, in this case, I want to synchronize our new description that comes from the ERP. So I need to right-click, use the ERP value. You can see that we also have a couple of blue lines. It's totally normal. So to accelerate the loading process and the synchronization process, Agni kept all of these items closed to accelerate the process, but the end user can manually open item by item by clicking on this little arrow, or simply click on the button here to open the entire tree. So we can see that once it's synchronized, everything is white, everything is good. So we don't need to open the children just for nothing. But if you want to, you can open each item to get some information. So in this case, I can synchronize just like that to synchronize our new description that comes from the ERP. Since it's a very simple change in the BOM, it will be pretty fast. So I just need to click on Save and synchronize to complete the synchronization. So it's save operation successful. So you can see that now if I look at our properties for our pillow block, that now we have a new description that comes from the ERP system, which is now pillow block production. So it's really how Agni integrate bidirectionally your metadata between the CAD and the ERP system. And it's really the same concept for all mappings that you would have in your integration. In this case, I'm using an out-of-the-box with the minimum set of mappings, but please note that you can add as many mappings as you need in your integration. Okay, is there any questions at this point on the integration process before we take a look at the integration builder?
No.
All right. So the last tool that I would like to talk about is the integration builder. It's the administrator tool to build new mappings or edit existing mappings. So I will go directly to the mappings tab here. It's really where all the magic happens in Agni. So in the integration builder, each line is a mapping. You can see the item number, the description, the item type, unit of measure, and etc. Each column is a section, ERP, CAD, the behaviors, and just below you have some properties and behaviors. So the first two sections here, the ERP and the CAD, is where we establish the connection between both systems. So you can see, for example, the item number, we enter the right service name and the right property name. This information comes from Acumatica. And we do the same thing for the CAD system. We enter the right property set and the right property name that is set up in the CAD system. And once these two sections are configured, the mapping itself is now established between both systems. And now we need to add some behaviors and some properties for this new mapping. So if I go on the right, you can see that mapping by mapping, it could be required in the ERP. So normally when it's required in the ERP, it's also required in the dashboard. So required, what it means that if you manually create an item in Acumatica, and if the ERP requires some values to be entered, it's normally it's a good practice to add this mapping to be required in the ERP and the dashboard. This way, if the end user forgot to enter, for example, his description, he will have red cells and he will need to complete these fields. You can display to the end user each mapping. So you may want to have an integration that will display the pricing information, for example. And you may want to have another mapping that, or another integration in which you will hide those mappings to the end user. Prevalence here is really where we decide which side will prevail when you synchronize. So for example, the description here, if I look at the options, it could prevail from the CAD system only, from the CAD, from the ERP only, but normally in most cases we will use CAD or ERP except if empty. And we rarely use ask user if conflict. So that's why when we enter a new description in the ERP and we reload the dashboard, we add discrepancies, warnings in the description. In Agni has kept the description that comes from the ERP is because it's set to be to prevail from the ERP system. So if the value exists in the ERP, Agni will take this value. But in this case, if the value don't exist in the ERP, it will take the value from the CAD system. That's why it's ERP, except if the value is empty, it will take the value in the CAD. Each mapping can be set in read-only, could be read-only CAD, ERP, or dashboard. You can see these columns as the bucket number 1, bucket number 3, and the bucket number 2, which is the Smart Bridge engine. So all of these system can be set to read-only for on a mapping by mapping basis. Here is the section where we set up the lookups. You remember the little button with 3 dots that look at all the possible values from the ERP. So this is where we set up all of those lookups. We can also set default values. For example, if you are always using, for example, each for your unit of measure, you can add the default value here, each, for example. And this way, if the end user forgot to enter all of his unit of measure in the BOM, Agni will automatically fill the unit of measure with each. And of course, the end user can always change this value in the dashboard if it doesn't fit his need. And the last section is a very important feature in the integration builder. It's the expression. It's a very powerful feature. If I click on this expression here, you can see that in this case, it's more complex expression, but you can also have very basic expression, or you can have a complex expression. And here at the bottom, you can see all the type of expression that you can create. You can also create even C# expressions. So for example, this one here is a C# expression to manage the translation and the correction. And here you have all the tools necessary on the right side here to build your expressions. So an expression can be used for many things. It could be used to concatenate some values. It could be used to copy one value from one mapping to another mapping. It could be used to calculate the weight from one of your formula, for example. Could also be used, for example, if it can take the value from one mapping, take the value from a second mapping, merge those values to create, for example, the qualified part number. So it's a very powerful feature to build some automation for your integration. So it's pretty much it for the integration builder. So is there any questions on the integration builder, or in fact, for the entire demos, since this will conclude my demo?
Not for me, guys. This looks really great. Thank you so much.
All right.